sports enthusiast, avid sports enthusiast. He's also got another talent like songwriting and singer, and his latest tune was just released for Apple iTunes yesterday or day before. I ask you to go look for it, Pete Scoville. You're going to like it, and support them. We need to support our veterans in any which way that we can. My job today is going to be brief also. I get to introduce a man that I've known for 55 years. So going back in my history of 55 years, what do I want to tell you about him? I want to tell you that he's an Air Force veteran, a C-130 pilot, and because of that, I think my daddy let me marry him. Because my father was a P-38 out of in the Pacific, flew off of Guam. Never talked much about his service. But I'm proud to be his daughter. I'm proud of the man that I married. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is hungry for a leader. I know such a man. Rick Perry could not have done what he did in Texas without help of his legislatures and his support group, but Texas wouldn't be the 12th largest standalone economy in the world if it weren't for a leader. We need a leader of this country who's true to his morals, a Christian man, a military man, and he is my ticket. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Perry.
Nita, thank you. You couldn't look mean if you wanted to. But I might add, you do look cool. So anyway, thank you all for coming out and being here today. And to each of these individuals who are standing behind me, they've made a substantial commitment, not just to me, but to this country. And I think that is at the root of who we really are. What Anita and I are drawn to these individuals because we respect every man and woman who's worn the uniform of this country. And it's just an aside here. Every individual who's worn the uniform of this country, hold your hand up just a second. Let us say thank you for your service. Thank you, sir. Thank you. God bless you. And it's not just you. There's extended family there. There's spouses. There are, brothers and sisters that have shared the burden of your service. And that's what we're really about, preacher. I mean, it's about sending the message across this country that we recognize the great sacrifice that men and women who have served this country, but it's also their families, the people who continue to pay an extraordinary price. We had early on Thursday and Friday traveling with us the widow of Chris Kyle, Taya Kyle, an amazing patriot in her own right, continuing to go tell the story of the great sacrifices that her husband and men like these behind me have made. And that is a powerful story for us as Americans. And the reason that we're here today, the reason that we're standing right here in South Carolina today, enjoying this moment, is because of sacrifices that men and women have made before. We stand on the shoulders of giants, of great and extraordinary sacrificial individuals. People like Anita's father, who was a P-38 pilot in the Pacific in 1944 and 45. Men like my father, a 90-year-old today who's still living out on the farm. But he left there in 1943-44 to go serve his country as a tail gunner on B-17s in East Anglia. He flew 35 missions over Nazi-held Europe to help free that continent. And his experiences, his sharing with me about public service, about giving back, about having a cause bigger than yourself, is what paints my worldview. What paints my worldview is also is my time of wearing the uniform as a pilot in the United States Air Force, of traveling into countries and seeing how these individual countries react to different types of government. And really bringing it home to me what an extraordinary country we live in. And that the freedoms that we have are protected by these selfless servants. And that must be focus as we go forward. Because I will tell you, I'm optimistic about the future of this country. I'm incredibly optimistic about the future of this country. I think our best days are in front of us. Now, there's a little reason to be pessimistic from time to time when you look around and you see 1 out of 10 of our citizens are either unemployed, underemployed, or just giving up hope of finding a job. 1 out of 5 of our children that are on food stamps and families that are taking food stamps. We got a participation rate in our job market that's down around 62.5%, the lowest that we've had since 1978. Speaking of 78, I kind of feel like 78, 79 from time to time when I look around and see what's going on. You all that are old enough to remember 79, we were on our back. We had that job participation rate down there at that low level. We had our grain embargoed from going to Russia. We had our Olympic athletes that were boycotted by President Carter. He was going to show those Russians. Kids who had spent their entire life preparing to go represent America. And he didn't let them go. Our embassy was taken over in Iran. It kind of feels like 1979 again. But here's the great story. In a decade, by 1989, we saw the Berlin Wall fall and we saw Soviet communism defeated because we elected a president who understood that America is great, that America is powerful, that the world is safer when America is stronger. And we can do this again. I'm completely as sure as the sun's going to come up in the east tomorrow. I know that America's best days are in front of us. And I know it because I've seen what can happen when you free people from overtaxation and overregulation. For 14 years, I had the great privilege to govern, be the chief executive of the 12th largest economy in the world. And when you free people from overtaxation, overregulation, when you give kids the opportunity to go succeed because you've helped them graduate from high school, then our best days are in front of us. I'm telling you, I've got a vision of this country that's powerful from the standpoint of, and it all starts with American energy. It starts with North American energy. When I talk about North America, I'm talking about Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Those 3 countries have more known energy reserves than Russia and Saudi Arabia. Use that, open up the XL pipeline, for goodness sake, send a message to the Canadians. Create the jobs, create the wealth that can come from that. Spin off of that, driving down the cost of electricity. You couple that with driving down the corporate tax rate. Any accountant worth their salt will tell you drive the corporate tax rate down by 10%. You're going to see a 5 to 10% increase of mid-level wages. Every working man and woman ought to be standing up and saying, Perry, I'm going to vote for you because you're going to make my life better. You're going to allow my family to have a better future because you're going to help raise our wages. And that's what we can do. You put those 2 things together. You give incentives to bring manufacturing back into states like South Carolina, and I'm telling you, we can have a renaissance of manufacturing in this country like we've never seen before. You free up these governors from this one-size-fits-all mentality that comes out of Washington, D.C. I can promise you, Nikki Haley and your legislature here know better how to deliver health care than some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. And I know for a fact that Nikki and the legislature, working with the men and women of this country, can come up with a lot better curriculum for your kids in high school than some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. That's the reason I'm against Common Core. Let these states compete. I mean, that's what our founding fathers realized. It was the beauty of their document, the Constitution. When you think about what that Bill of Rights, old Justice Brandeis, he said that states are the laboratories of democracy. And you let these states experiment. They'll come up with new and innovative ideas on how to best deliver services to their people. And I believe that because I've seen it happen in the state of Texas. But all too often we're hamstringed by Washington, D.C. They put strings and red tape in there that don't allow you to be as innovative and creative. It is time to have a president of the United States that respects our Constitution and particularly looks at that 10th Amendment and says we're going to devolve power out of Washington, D.C. The Constitution says we're supposed to do a few things and do those few things well, like stand a strong military. Every one of these young people standing behind me today One of the reasons that they're standing there is they understand that I'm going to make sure that we have a strong military. You have a strong economy that can create the resources that flow into the government so you can fund a strong military, strong diplomatic impact. That is one of the most important things that a president, or for that matter a governor, does. Create that economic climate. We're supposed to stand a strong military. It's enumerated in the Constitution. Another thing that's in there, it says we're supposed to secure our border. Wouldn't it be a good thing if Washington, D.C. did their constitutional duty and secured our border? I know a little bit of something about that. Having been the governor for 14 years with a country on our border, on our southern border, 1,200 plus miles. Last summer, the president came to Dallas. I wanted to talk to him, and he was gracious enough to let me come and talk to him on a ramp. We're sitting in Marine One. And after a 30-minute conversation, I realized he wasn't going to do anything about securing our border. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Mr. President, if you will not secure the border, Texas will. And that's exactly what we did. We went home and we asked the National Guard, we asked our Texas Guard members if they would volunteer. I wanted 1,000 individuals to go down and be force multiplier on that border, to be between our law enforcement, our Texas Ranger recon teams, our Parks and Wildlife wardens who were literally in the river. And I had 2,000 people held their hand up and said, "Here am I, sir, send me." That's what we expect out of Washington. You elect me your president, and I will secure that border. I'm optimistic about the future. I'm so optimistic about the future of this country, what we can do together. And I'm optimistic about it because I feel very comfortable. I know this country. Whether it was growing up on that dryland cotton farm 16 miles from the closest place that had a post office, in a house that didn't have running water, being the son of 2 tenant farmers, and understanding what working hard to get by is all about. Whether it was going off to that institution that gave me the opportunity and gave me the key that opened the future of my life, or whether it's seeing this country from the cockpit of a C-130 traveling all around the world. I am so optimistic about our country because I know our people, and I've seen our people, and I think about the history of our people. We went through a civil war together. We've gone through 2 world wars together. We went through the Great Depression. We made it through Jimmy Carter. Ladies and gentlemen, we will make it through the Obama years. I believe that with all my heart. And our best days are in front of us. America's longing for leadership in the White House that will stand up and defend America's values, that talks about American exceptionalism. If you elect me your president, I promise you, America will be America again. God bless you, and thank you all for coming out and being with us today.